And we were watching way too early this morning. You had a story about Tucker Carlson, some new text messages that coming to light, perhaps some of the motivation we're hearing about why Fox may have let him go.
Yeah, some new reporting from the New York Times. A racially charged text message reportedly sent by Tucker Carlson to a Fox News producer is providing more insight into why the cable news station fired the former host last week. Just one day before the company was set to take the stand for a billion-dollar defamation trial last month, the Times is reporting that this previously redacted message came to the attention of Fox executives. The Times reports it was sent to one of his producers in the hours after the January 6th insurrection and reads in part this way. A couple of weeks ago, I was watching video of people fighting on the street in Washington. A group of Trump guys surrounded an Antifa kid and started pounding the living crap out of him. It was 3 against 1, at least. Jumping a guy like that is dishonorable, obviously. It's not how white men fight. Yet suddenly, I found myself rooting for the mob against the man, hoping they'd hit him harder, kill him. I really wanted them to hurt the kid. I could taste it. Carlson later goes on to write that he, quote, shouldn't gloat over the man's suffering, but according to the Times, the earlier portion of the message was concerning enough that it contributed to Fox's decision to settle with Dominion Voting Systems for more than $787 million and ultimately fire the host. Other messages, including ones where Carlson disparaged Fox executives and used sexist language, also reportedly led to his firing. The contents of this latest message are part of redacted court filings and were disclosed to the Times in interviews with several people close to the Dominion lawsuit, but have not yet been independently confirmed by NBC News. NBC has reached out to both Carlson's attorneys and Fox News for a response, but has not heard back. A representative for Carlson did tell the Times that he had no comment on the story. So, Michael Steele, just want to kind of get your reaction here to this latest revelation, a text message that seems to be of a part of a larger puzzle as to why Tucker Carlson was shown the door.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I think that a lot of what we now know from the Dominion case really filled in some of the backstory about exactly how these hosts like Tucker operated within the Fox ecosystem. I mean, the fact that something like that could be sent to a colleague and it sort of sits there and nothing happens or comes from it. It's not until you get into this sort of adversarial prosecutorial setting in which it becomes public or potentially becomes public that you see some reaction. So it really speaks to the culture inside the building. In many respects, that type of communication doesn't rise to a point where, he's brought in by the leadership of the company and said, what the hell are you talking about? What do you mean? How white men fight? You want to see somebody get killed on the streets of D.C.? And so I think there are probably going to be more of this, quite honestly. As even though this case is settled in that regard, you still have the Smartmatic case coming forward. Don't know all the access to emails and the documents they have there, but it really speaks to a culture, I think, that had grown up inside of Fox, that you could communicate that way with a producer, with someone of authority inside the building, and everyone's okay with it.
Well, and the culture was just a culture of no accountability, specifically for their biggest star. Those lines had to horrify them, knowing that was going to be out publicly, especially when you looked at all the other things that were going to be going out, him repeatedly using the C word to describe women, to describe one of Trump's lawyers when he was pushing back against the very election rigging lie, the big lie that Trump pushed. Here you actually have a Fox News host saying they wanted a group of Trumpers to kill a kid. His words. I wanted them to kill the kid. You mix that up with, again, the C word used to describe women that he worked with or that came across him, the anti-Semitism that we hear is going to be coming out in the producer's lawsuit. It's just hard to imagine why they wouldn't at the end feel like it was their best legal move, political move, PR move to send him on his way. And Mehdi Hassan put together a compilation a few days ago when people started engaging in this really bizarre anti-Tucker babbling. Oh, well, sure, he's bad. Sure, he's this. Sure, he's that. But he did some really good things. The trains ran on time. Sure, we heard it from Barry Weiss. We heard it from Andrew Sullivan, people that I read regularly. And they did this anti-Tuckerism, just like people used to always do the anti-Trumpism. Mehdi Hassan said he had the receipts and wanted to show all these people that were engaging in anti-Tuckerism exactly what they were defending. And yes, they are defending this by saying whatever bad things Tucker Carlson did, well, at least he was anti-woke. This is what they're defending whenever they go to the mat for Tucker.
White supremacy, that's the problem. This is a hoax. There's no evidence that white supremacists were responsible for what happened on January 6th. That's a lie. We have a moral obligation to admit the world's poor, they tell us, even if it makes our own country poorer and dirtier and more divided. Demographics.
Remember the Great Replacement theory? Was it conspiracy theory? It sounds more like a statistical fact.
Ilhan Omar is living proof that the way we practice immigration has become dangerous to this country. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, herself a symbol of America's failed immigration system. Can a single human being actually be as loathsome as Ilhan Omar is? It's hard to believe. Dating Montel Williams, is something that's within her range of experience. Is she good at it? We can't say, but she's done it. Just for masochistic reasons, can you do one more time? So it might be time for Joe Biden to let us know what Ketanji Brown Jackson's LSAT score was. What the hell did she do in the LSATs? They think that you should be elevated in America based on what you do, on the choices you make, not on how you're born, not in your DNA, because that's Rwanda. Rwanda. We're still not precisely sure how George Floyd died. Very few unarmed black men are killed by white cops these days. Where's George Floyd when you need him? The only job training program this administration has gotten behind in 2.5 years is getting black people to sell more weed in the cities. You never see politicians transition into, say, Malcolm X. Why is that? Maybe because Malcolm X didn't talk like a sharecropper. Xenophobia! It seems almost antique. This show, more than any other show on television, has taken an aggressive position in favor of colorblind equality and against racism.
And there are, Jen, there are people, people who I've read who I think make some very important points on different issues, who are actually going out defending him, saying, well, I'll just say Andrew Sullivan, both Tucker and Bobby represent, it seems to me, something nonetheless real, a deepening suspicion of corporate and government authority. And then Barry Weiss says, you can't deny how important Tucker was and is. Nellie and I watched his monologues and not quite nightly, but the next day on YouTube. Let's see, what else did she say? Just said he was one of the only people on TV who made viewers aware of the new military-industrial complex, the alliance between big tech and the government. I mean, you know what? I can name about 5 other people. I want you guys to play that clip again. I want you to play the clip because I want these people who are defending Tucker Carlson, I want them to see once again what they're defending. Play the clip.
White supremacy, that's the problem. This is a hoax. There's no evidence that white supremacists were responsible for what happened on January 6th. That's a lie. We have a moral obligation to admit the world's poor, they tell us, even if it makes our own country poorer and dirtier and more divided. Demographic.
Remember the Great Replacement theory? Was it conspiracy theory? It sounds more like a statistical fact.
Ilhan Omar is living proof that the way we practice immigration has become dangerous to this country. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, herself a symbol of America's failed immigration system. Can a single human being actually be as loathsome as Ilhan Omar is? It's hard to believe. Dating Montel Williams, is something that's within her range of experience. Is she good at it? We can't say, but she's done it. Just for masochistic reasons, can you do one more time? So it might be time for Joe Biden to let us know what Ketanji Brown Jackson's LSAT score was. What the hell did she do in the LSATs? They think that you should be elevated in America based on what you do, on the choices you make, not on how you're born, not in your DNA, because that's Rwanda. Rwanda. We're still not precisely sure how George Floyd died. Very few unarmed black men are killed by white cops these days. Where's George Floyd when you need him? The only job training program this administration has gotten behind in 2.5 years is getting black people to sell more weed in the cities. You never see politicians transition into, say, Malcolm X. Why is that? Maybe because Malcolm X didn't talk like a sharecropper. Xenophobia! It seems almost antique. This show, more than any other show on television, has taken an aggressive position in favor of colorblind equality and against racism.
So I have no words, not only for what we saw there, but also by people who are going out there going, yeah, but at least he wasn't woke. So we're going to be okay with the most racist rants that I think we've heard on national news in our lifetimes.
When I saw the headline last night about what the text message that supposedly got him fired said, I had like a gasp and then an oh. Right. Of course, this is what was happening behind the scenes. And sometimes even I can make the mistake of not appreciating just how dark things can get in some corners of the right. And what really struck me about that text message, Joe, is the casual aside about it's not how white men fight, right? He could have very easily not included that in the text message. He said, it's, as an aside, he says, it's dishonorable, of course. It's not how white men fight. It tells you that sort of how established it was within the culture that white people were supreme. So it's not, when you see the misogyny, the racism that he's airing, and then find behind the scenes, it's actually a little darker than even what you saw aired in that 2-minute clip.
Joe, can I jump in on it real quick? Because I think that's an important point, that it is darker than what we see on the clip. And what you see from all of this is a feeding into the system. Tucker's reflecting an attitude that, those clips really touch on, that entices and excites that particular audience, who believe, that's not how white men fight, who believe that Congresswoman Omar is somehow an anathema to everything American. And so it feeds into this, it's this sort of representation that you see on air every night. And it is darker off camera, but it's no less relevant because it does partly feed that narrative that they want to put out there about this country and about people like myself, who don't look like or should not be considered. The job market for selling weed, for black people selling weed on the streets of D.C., what the hell is that supposed to be? I grew up in that city. There were more white folks selling weed at times than black folks. So, but that's not the point. That's not the point. And the point is to continue the caricature of black people. This idea that this Antifa, this individual was worthy of killing because they weren't white. It's just a whole culture thing that we've got to deal with, because Tucker's a symbol of that. He's a symptom of that. And the real problem is that Fox allowed it and promoted it every single night, elevated it up, mainstreamed it, gave it commercials, gave it, lead-ins, gave it, advertising, all this stuff that made it seem okay. And you made the point a little bit earlier. You would say it's the first time in your lifetime you could see just outward racism just spewed on national television every night, and everybody's like, "Yay!" So, I think this is an interesting moment. There's going to be more of this, like I said, to come. This is just one of, I'm sure, of a lot of stuff that Tucker and others at Fox have been saying behind the scenes that will get some light. And now the question is, now that the light is exposing it, what do we do with it? How do we process it? And what does the journalistic community do about it when they see one of their own pushing this kind of narrative out to the country?
Well, and again, and what do those who are defending him, sort of the anti Tucker crowd doing? It's just like we saw at Willie for years, the anti-Trump crowd, where it didn't matter how important Trump was. They never defended Trump. They just attacked the people who were being critical of Donald Trump. And then, of course, you find out a lot of people at Fox were being far more critical about Donald Trump than even we were on air, calling him the most evil person and a destroyer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it is very interesting. But we are now with Donald Trump, that we're coming into a very interesting place where you're going to have media outlets trying to mainstream a guy who tried to overthrow the United States government. Good luck with that. Good luck with that for your democracy. Good luck with that for your network. Good luck for that for people who work with you. It's kind of hard to mainstream that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how everyone handles Donald Trump. This is not 2016. There's nothing novel about his potential as president. He has a record as president, which includes leading an attempted coup against the United States government. So there can be no reset. Well, let's start over. He's a candidate. He's got a long record now as president, and it's not pretty. Still ahead on Morning Joe with